Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen.
With me today is life coach and LOA teacher Joel Elston.
This is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today.
You know, Joel, as we were getting ready to do the show, as we so often do, we were catching up on what's going on in our lives and so forth. And we finished up by agreeing that life is an ongoing roller coaster ride, and we're just here for the ride.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's really it, right? And it's all how you're going to look at that ride. Because, I mean, you can look at that ride as it being a pretty negative thing or a pretty positive thing or somewhere in the middle, you know, but how are you going to look at it? That's really what it comes down to.
That's all. Perspective is everything.
Yeah. And along those same lines, the perspective is a measurement of just how powerful our minds are, because our minds are driving the experience.
Well, you know, one of my favorite sayings, you know, the brain is the most important organ in the body according to the brain.
Yeah. I don't think I've heard that one. That's good. I like that one.
Yeah. So it's I have some other analogies like that wouldn't be appropriate for our show, but the brain, you know, the brain is the source of all of the and not to get into the intricacies of the mind or the brain. Let's just refer to it as the brain.
Okay.
But it's far more powerful than we realize. It dictates everything, because once you understand, as you're sort of alluding to, the perspective. Once you understand you control your perspective, then you control your reality. I probably say that every single week, but it's so literal that it makes the mind incredibly powerful. And most people, I don't want to say most people, but often people will use it in the wrong way and not understanding that they're a powerful creator toward the negative as well as the positive.
And often they would not be aware of how they're doing it, of how they're using their mind.
Right.
I'll give you an example. I had an interaction with a gentleman over. Somebody had posted something about what was going on in their life, and it had a nice little positive spin to it. And this guy was basically tearing apart everything that the guy said. And so I left a reply comment to this guy saying, "I'm glad I don't have your mindset." And so he asked for an expansion on the comment. I said, "Whoa, I mean, this guy was celebrating something, and you were finding a way to tear him down any way you could." And he came back at me with another comment that basically went into fine detail about all the different ways that the guy's original post was just a mess and was all very, very negative and all that kind of stuff. And so I wrote in reply, "Thank you very much for your beautiful example of exactly what I was talking about."
I love that answer.
But I mentioned it because I don't think he was really aware of what he was doing with his mind. He was doing it very effectively, but I don't think he really grasped it.
Yeah, the filter is when you have that negative spin. So you're filtering for everything, and you can only see it through a negative lens. So he's going to tear apart the message, and not even remotely understand what he's doing. And he really believes that, first of all, it's his responsibility to comment on that. I don't know why, but it's like, I need you to see my point of view, and my point of view is right, and here's where you're wrong.
Exactly.
And that's we were talking before the show, and the idea that you can have a perspective about something. Like earlier today, I got some information concerning taxes that was concerning. It was like I was told I owed more than I thought I was owing, and it was like in a substantial amount more.
A lot more than you thought, yeah.
And I was like, oh, so my immediate reaction was to go, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? And I'm like, no, I have the money, and I'll be able to do it. But let me just leave it alone for right now. Let me not play with it right now. Let me do my workout stuff. Later, I get a text saying, that's worded improperly. You owe X amount, which was substantially less. I mean, it was a tiny fraction. Yeah, but he was explaining my overall tax bill after I paid my quarterly estimated taxes. So it was such a tiny amount, but the difference in that mood or mindset, I realized that initial statement was going to get me off kilter, and I didn't want to do my day that way.
Right.
So I
And who
reverted.
knows what that would have played out to, right? I mean, because if you go into your day with, because it's easy to see what kind of mindset you could end up with there.
Sure.
It could be really negative, like, oh my God, where am I going to get the money for this? My life is falling apart. This is going to be
Yes.
a cult. And then that just sets you up for one thing after another. And you didn't do that, which was
Yeah.
more to your credit. But if you had done that, it would have probably tumbled way out of control in a bad way. I'm willing to bet that because you didn't do that, your day actually went pretty darn well.
Oh, and then when I got the news, I'm like, excellent news. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
You gave me a plot twist to the day. And
Yeah, right.
and and then I evaluated, and I said, no matter what, I have to protect my perspective. I have to keep my perspective, no matter what happened. So even if I owed that gigantic amount of money, I have the money. I just, the timing of it all, with the stock market is getting crushed right now. Everything's down.
Yeah.
Me get accessing that money would have been an additional taxable event. And I was thinking about, but none of that mattered. I said, I'll just sit with it. I got it covered. It'll be fine. Even if I have to pay it, I don't have to pay it. It was already paid. But it actually sort of made my day better, because I'm like, wow, I mean, I used my strategies, and I didn't
Yeah.
have to do anything, and it just sort of fixed itself.
Well, not only did it fix itself, this is kind of what I was alluding to. You also set yourself up so that the rest of the day would be a great experience.
Absolutely. No matter what happened with that, it was going to be a great experience.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
that is where I'm saying that the power of the mind is underestimated.
Absolutely. Well, and the power we've discussed on many occasions, the influence the mind has over bodily function, the placebo effect, believing. There's multiple studies. One was people that believed they had a good night's sleep when they had a terrible night's sleep.
Yeah.
Their body responded as if they had a great night's sleep, and vice versa.
Yep.
People that believed they were drinking zero sugar milkshakes did not have the same insulin response that when they were drinking. The body just
That's astonishing, by the way, that one right there.
that one blew me away more than anything, and it was like, wow, I didn't even understand that.
Yeah.
But the mind is going to respond, and so the we don't even know to the degree, because so much of goes on that we're aware of, and you're participating in life, but the mind itself goes far beyond our even realization of what it does do. And so when I post often the statement says, you're more powerful than you possibly can imagine. And what I should say is, your mind is far more powerful than you possibly could imagine. That's really the statement. I'm not talking about necessarily physical strength. The mind has expansion and abilities far beyond we give it credit for.
That's it. That last phrase, that's really the most accurate one. The mind is a whole lot more powerful than we give it credit for.
Yes. And
that's huge, because we do, well, let's be honest, we are all humans, and as humans, we do have a very strong tendency to not give ourselves full credit.
Right.
In fact, there are societal strictures against it. What do we say about somebody who is constantly giving themselves full credit? Oh, he's so full of himself.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So, well, nobody wants to be accused of that. So we have to calm it down, right? We have to tone the whole thing down and make it lesser than what it is.
Right. One of my young clients is doing, I think it's geometry. He's stuck on one of the maths, and I'm pretty sure it's geometry. I think he's 15. He said, I just simply cannot do geometry. And I go, you are so correct. And he goes, aren't you supposed to tell me I can? I said, you can, but you're stating a narrative that you're wanting me to. So I can't, my words don't mean anything, but in reality, you're not getting the resources. You're not giving yourself credit. You have all the tools to move to this next level of math, but yet you're not allowing yourself, because the statement you made. And so we worked on, just his belief prevented him from being successful in geometry. Now he's coming out with a different approach. He's, I said, I've asked you, there's 2 tutors available to you right now. You have not called either one. Let's call the tutor. Let's set up the appointment. And so his first tutoring appointment was the day after mine, because we made it while he was in my office. And he goes, when she broke it down the way she did, it makes complete sense now. I think I understand. I said, Exactly. You just needed it, but you made a statement that became your reality. Your body and your mind, your everything listens to what you tell it.
Yes.
And the mind has a lot more power, but its limits are often, not often, they're almost always imposed by the negative belief system. The limits are your belief system. You know, I can't do this. There's no way possible. Once I understood that, and you know me, I jump into stuff. I just jump in it. Like, let's start a new company. Let's do this. Let's do that. And it works. I don't really know how it works sometimes, but it does, because I have a belief that it's going to work, and it's comical. I'm comically unprepared.
I know that feeling too. Yeah,
Yeah.
of being comically unprepared, because what you're really saying is you're walking into a situation knowing that, well, something is going to come out of it, but I don't know really what it is. And if I were to try to guess what it is, I'd probably be wrong. So I'm not going to say anything because I don't want to be an idiot. But I know something's going to come out of it, and it's going to be good.
Yeah, and it always is. It's just that even if that isn't good, it leads to something that will be good. So I believe in that. Some, brainstorming, thinking of ideas, getting out of your environment, thinking differently, look at what could go right. The wild, I love brainstorming with the wild, crazy ideas. What's the most crazy idea you can think of?
Yeah, absolutely. You used another word to it that I want to come back to. You said allowing. And the reason I wanted to kind of extract that from the conversation is that allowing is one of those things that we talk about needing to be able to do. The art of allowing is what it's often called.
Yes.
How do you allow something in? And at first glance, allowing can seem like, well, there's nothing really to be done there. I mean, allow? What do you mean allow? I mean, I allow it at any time. What are you talking about? Because we aren't really aware of how we're not allowing. We have a blind spot where that allowing is concerned, and this is an example of it, right? What you're really talking about when you're talking about allowing it is that you're talking about relaxing a piece of us that, how do you describe it, that has the limiting belief attached to it?
Yes.
I think it's the way you said it.
Yes. I'm more clear. My brain is not going back that far.
Well, I'm just allowing you to go back.
Okay, thank you. My brain said no. We're way down the road, because I got
We're way down the road, right?
Yeah, we got statements coming up that are already loaded in there.
I love it. That's funny. But the point is that I'm trying to make is that allowing, because it's one of those skills that we wish we knew how to do. This is an indicator of how to do it. If you're willing to allow yourself to be as brilliant in the mind as you really are, rather than the level to which you think you're permitted to be, then you are giving yourself full range.
Yes.
You see what I'm saying?
I do, completely.
As compared to somebody who is kind of fitting that stricture I was talking before. Nobody wants to be accused of being full of themselves, right? So we're going to pull it back, and we're only going to allow ourselves to go a certain distance. We'll show this much power, we'll show this much ability, and we'll deny the rest of it because it's humble, right? Well, it's good to be humble, so we're going to be humble about it.
Yes, and one of the things, not challenging your statement, but what you're saying is absolutely correct. But when you don't even have the knowledge to not allow, it's an effortless event. That's what I mean. Like my younger clients that really get into this process, they don't even understand they can't allow it. It's not even part of the function. That's why they are so efficient at it. They don't have to allow anything because they don't believe there's any limits in the first place.
Right. Yeah.
So if you're in the right mindset, the allowing piece is almost bypassed because you're just assuming it's there. It's all, well, we're going to do this, and that's part of that reasoning that I'm such a believer in younger people, young teens and early 20s being able to get into the law of attraction really well, is because, okay, well, that works. There's nothing to stop that. There's no limiting belief that built up over 50 years and programming that built up over that. It's like, when you were, I always tell the statement, you remember when you were 8 years old and you believed that everything was amazing and all that, and then you grew up, you were right then. You're not right now. And you know, back then it was just like, man, this is exciting. And like, right, you know, now I don't care if a fire truck drives by me. I mean, when I was 8, oh my God, a fire truck. You know,
Mhm.
it was just we don't look at the world the same way. And part of that is the process that builds up the blocking of allowing, because you the limits that the world says you don't be full of yourself, and you know the idea that I speak to people. I always try to speak to people to the brilliance that I see in them.
Mm.
Uh, and I hope they start that dialogue of brilliance to themselves as well.
As you're talking about that, my mind went back to something last week. As you know, I'm a dancer, and last week one of our favorite area dances was held. It's a monthly dance at the end of the week, and it was one of the best bands in the area. So it was a really really good event. Everybody's having a good time. And at one point, I'm dancing with one of my favorite dance partners. I mean, she's such a good dancer. She's so easy to lead and so forth. So we just have a great time whenever we dance. And toward the end of it, I now I've gotten to the point now, I have done swing dancing for three and a half decades, so I have a ton of experience doing it. Even though there was a gap of about 20 years where I stopped doing it, nevertheless, there's enough in there that I have no fears. I have nothing holding me back. I can just kind of go with it. I don't have to think about it. I just go with what I'm feeling at the moment. And this particular follower, I love dancing with her so much that I just go with, at this instant, what next move do I want to throw at her? Because I know she can do anything that I throw at her.
Right.
And at that particular moment, there was something I didn't think about it. It was just I led her through a series of moves. And when we're all done, she looks at me, she says, "Wow, you've never done that one before. Did you just learn that one?" And I'm caught off guard because I hadn't given it no thought at all. Right.
Yeah.
I just gone with it. I said, well, no, actually, it's about 30 years old. No, I couldn't even remember what the move was, to be honest. I mean, I did it 3 seconds ago, and I still couldn't remember what I had just done. Right? It was one of those intuitive things. If I had thought about it, I probably would have intimidated myself into thinking that it was lesser than what it was.
Yes, I agree.
But because I was in that kind of intuitive, open-minded framework where it didn't really matter. Okay, I'm glad you liked it. That was wonderful.
Yes,
there was
beautiful, yeah.
It was 100% allowing, because there was no limiting thought involved.
Well, and again, to get intricate in that a little bit, because the art of allowing suggests that there has to be effort to allow. The
Yes.
truth is, no blocking mechanisms are there, so there is no effort to allow. Does that make sense?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So I know a lot of people say, "What do you mean by allow?" I go, "Well, it's really not blocking it," and so we have to frame it. We have to call it something. But the art of allowing isn't really about an action of allowing. It's just accepting there's no limitations. It's just wait a minute, I don't know why, and just especially in heat of the moment or spur of the moment events like you're talking about. The allowing is not necessary, because it's just it's automatically assumed that's going to happen.
Kind of. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you don't think about it. You don't have to worry about it. You don't want to worry about it. In fact, you're too busy just having fun at that moment that worry is like the last thing that you're interested in.
Yeah. What we use that technique with one of the high school divers that I worked with many years ago. He went on to college to dive, and it was a high school state championship in diving, and they had 3 dives, and the highest score was going to count.
Mm-hmm.
So the first one, he did an entry level, solid, guaranteed, low difficulty, but nail it to get locked in.
Sure.
So you're going for that. And so let's say he scored a 9.1 on that.
Okay.
That's pretty, perfect dive, but no degree of difficulty.
Yeah, just very stable, set a foundation, establish the baseline. Yeah.
Yeah. So the second dive, he had a higher degree of difficulty, more complicated dive, nailed it, and got like a 9.45,
mm-hmm.
which is pretty good.
Yeah, really good.
It got him into probably medal contention. And so we had discussed that if he got 9.4, 9.5, to just go do something. Whatever, just go crazy.
Yeah.
So he goes and he does this flip, but flips sideways and then lands and nail like a 9.9. And everybody's like, "Where did you learn that?" And he goes, "I didn't. I just I just let it go. I'd never done it before. So in a competition, he ended up won the state championship on a dive that he just made up when he was on the platform.
Wow.
And the degree of difficulty was so outrageous, and he nailed it. They said that's it was fascinating because he just avoided the concept of I can't do it. I'm already meddling, so let's just take a shot to blow everybody away, and he did, and nobody came close.
That's fantastic. I love that story. I love that because it perfectly illustrates what we're talking about. That the whole thing about allowing is just not putting anything in the way, like you said, not having any blocks in the way.
Right. And because we automatically install these blocks, and they've been installed in us. When we're children, your parents will, they'll say stuff like, well, you're not very good at that, or you this, well, you need to do this. And the idea that when you start programming that, you believe that. I've told a story on the show probably several times about a friend of mine who's a doctor. And when he was a kid, he had a painting that he was so proud of, and he took it home, and it was of a cowboy on a horse, and his teacher wrote, really good job. And he didn't get a lot of feedback at home. So he comes home to his mom, who is drinking wine in the middle of the day with her friend, and he showed them the picture, and he said they literally laughed at the disproportionate, 5-6-year-old drawing.
Sure.
It looked goofy, and they said, "Oh, if that were real, the horse would tip over." And he just took the painting, tore it up, and went upstairs.
Right.
And he said he never painted again. He never will paint again. Fast forward many years, he's married, divorced. He's dating this woman. He's a medical doctor. Plenty of life's going pretty well. Well, she's an artist that owns an art gallery, and so he said, "We're going to do art tonight." He goes, "Oh no, I can't paint." And she goes, "Anybody can paint. You let's stop that." So she basically said, "Just paint whatever, just whatever you think, just paint." Well, he had some good contrast. He painted, like a landscape, and people were like, "Are you a painter?" I mean, he ended up doing really well. He ended up in a very short period of time, getting a showing at a gallery, and
wow,
renowned. And he went from I can't do this to the 5-year-old programming to once he did it, he didn't realize he couldn't do it. And so he bypassed, and most people never get their own showing for years.
Yeah, sure.
He got one right away, and he goes,
right.
"Oh, I didn't know that." He had no limiting beliefs left.
Right.
So he went from one extreme to another, and he's semi-retired now and does nothing but paint. Really,
he does nothing but painting. I love it.
Yeah, he loves it, and he sells stuff, and he does really well with it. So
I've told this story before, but I'll tell it from a slightly different angle this time. My first grade teacher, who was a wonderful teacher, she was really good, beloved by students. To this day, my peers who were in that class with me are in touch with her. She's still alive, and they regularly communicate with her. So that's the degree this person is loved, and with good reason. But my parent-teacher conference with her, between her and my mom, apparently she was trying to find some way to balance it off because I had a good report. And she was trying to, make it a well-rounded report. So she said that I would never be very creative. And my mom was reluctant to even say that to me, to tell me that is what had happened. She told me a few years later. So I wasn't adversely affected by it. But it was one of those things where you hear, you're kind of annoyed, like, really? Especially with her. She's such a good teacher. She really said that. Well, a few years after that, after I'd grown up and so forth, I began to kind of take count one day of my various creative ventures. And it turned out at the time I was working as a graphic designer for an advertising agency. I was a musician. I was a composing musician. I was a writer. To this day, I'm a writer. And when you add it all up, it was like about the only creative form that I didn't do was painting, to mention painting. I did all, and drawing. I have basically done all of them. And as I look back, I said, "Well, Ms. Binzer, I guess you missed that one."
Yeah. Well, and that's that's one of those things where that programming. I was in choir when I was like 10 at our church. I thought I was a really, really good singer, And So I would sing loud, and I would sing, oh wow, this is great, and all this. And the evil choir director, one day she's like, Joel, can you just move your mouth? You are atrocious.
Mm.
This is church choir.
Wow.
I'm like, wow. I mean, I thought I was this great singer, and everybody chuckled and laughed. And I just, at that point, I just moved my mouth. I never went back to choir, never sang.
I don't blame you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I told my mom that, and she goes, I think you're exaggerating. I go, Mom would never take my side on those things. I was like,
Wow.
she literally she says, well, I don't like you quitting. I go, well, I'm not going to go move my mouth to, and of course, when my mom asked her, she goes, well, he must have misunderstood me. And my best friend goes, no, she said that. Absolutely. And so it's, and admit, with my voice, it's not going to be great singing. I got to really, now, especially that deep, whatever, but nonetheless, it just steered me away from that. And so to tell somebody something, John Lennon is the one that said every child is an artist until he's told he's not. And that's a really powerful statement, because every kid is an artist. We are all drawing when we're young, and then somebody along the way tells you, yeah, you're not very good.
Yeah. And the importance of that can't be understated. I really don't believe, because anytime that I've ever encountered a situation, particularly with children, where an adult went out of their way to encourage, not necessarily praise, it doesn't have to be praise, but to encourage a child on something that they were attempting to create, it always led to good results.
Yes. Well, Carol Dweck wrote the book Growth Mindset. And one of the things that she often espouses is, just blindly praising children really doesn't really do anything. They get oversaturated with just constant praise.
Right.
But praising their effort and energy and wow, look how hard you worked on that. That's amazing. And then you're rewarding the energy and effort. And and if they're fantastic, you say, and you're an incredible artist as well. But don't just say you're an incredible artist when they're like, okay, that's a pretty average picture. But you could say, you put so much work in. I admire your work ethic. I admire your effort. Now they're going to try even harder and harder and not feel like they're failing. So it isn't always about just, here's a trophy, you did great. It's also awarding the energy and effort and making sure you're sending them the right message, and kids will always respond to that.
What you are describing very eloquently is the distinction between the form of praise I always cringe at and the kind that I really appreciate for a kid.
Yes.
The one that I always cringe at, and it's amazing how many parents and teachers and so forth use this. I cringe every time I hear it. It's good job. And it's so overused that, I mean, the kid doesn't even have to have heard it overused, and he can hear in the tone of the voice what it means.
Yes.
As opposed to, wow, I really like that you did A, B, and C with this, which is very specific to that particular situation with that particular child and that particular encounter. It's an entirely different experience. Now, many people don't think that there's a big difference there.
Yeah.
I think there's a huge difference.
Oh, well, so much of it is because first of all, telling great job over and over and over, it's not a great job every time. It's not, it's just, it's one of those dismissed comments. But when you get specific about, I love how you shaded the background, or, wow, that was a great color choice, or, how do you think of that? And that reinforces them as an artist. I had one good encounter in 6th grade. I was your normal obnoxious 6th grade middle schooler. So they had this art teacher comes into our class and says, draw whatever you want to draw. Here's some crayons, whatever, So I just grabbed a purple crayon and I drew very remedial a purple dog.
Okay.
So they collect all the papers, and then so they started. One day I get this letter or this note from the principal said, I've been invited to art class. I went, did she look at my purple dog? I mean, that's not, these some people doing some great drawing. And so I got there and she said, I said, I literally told her, I said, I think I'm here by mistake because I just drew a purple dog and sort of didn't really try. And she goes, I wanted to talk to you and understand what the purple dog really intrigued me. What is that about? And I just said, well, that was the first crayon that was there. I just picked up the one that was right in front of me. And so she said, but no, she said, she made me feel like I was an artist or had a vision. Now, I really just did pick up the crayon that was in front of me, and I didn't really care. But
Right.
I participated in the art class and improved a lot in art. I obviously didn't follow with that, but it was I love the way she just found something in that, and it's
Right.
like these other people were in there with me. They were really good artists, and I'm the purple dog guy,
Right. Right.
and but it was okay. It was
Mhm.
she said, well, art is subjective, and she said my favorite color is purple, and she said, you really, is that what your dog looks like? And I go, well, it actually is exactly what my dog looks like. And so
Okay.
and so she said, well, so you put something in your heart, and it was like, I still thought she was half crazy, but I was like, at the same time, like, wow, it made me feel good. And,
Yeah.
it's something that, I didn't continue with art or anything along that line, but it was
Sure.
a moment of self-esteem. And if everybody sort of approached things that way of like, I love your work ethic. I love your, my dear friends that used to be neighbors and we're still very close. And, you know, her, the youngest is 7 and she's in gymnastics and dance, and she has the best work ethic. She never misses practice. She works so hard. She practices at home,
Mm.
and I'm just like, I love how not just how great of a dancer or cheerleader you are, but the energy you bring and how much you, and she focuses on every little detail. And she has us. We watch every routine multiple times. Trust me, multiple times. Now it's fun because, but she is I'm really, first of all, I am impressed, and she picks up on that. So she believes she has a good work ethic. She understands at 7 what that means. You try really hard, and so since she believes that, her reality is, teacher says you're the hardest worker in the room.
I'm reminded of, through that story, and I love that story, by the way, but I'm reminded of a study that was done in the 1950s. Of course, in the 1950s, that was where a lot of the seminal studies were done on human behavior.
Oh,
And
yeah.
one of this particular study, they took a grade level at a school that was going to be divided into 3 different classes with 3 different teachers. And they divided them up, and first teacher, they said, you're getting the honor students. And the second teacher, you're getting the ones in the middle. And the third one, you're getting the remedial ones. And then they went through the year and evaluated at the end of the year. And at the end of the year, that's exactly the way the grading came back.
Yep.
The only one problem was they didn't actually divide the kids up that way. It was all very randomly divided. So the expectations of the teachers is what led to the results of the
Absolutely.
students.
That study, by the way, has been repeated over 2,000 times, and with twist on that.
2,000. I didn't know that.
Yeah,
2,000.
they've done all different times. My favorite variation where they basically had this one kid going to 3rd grade. They picked a random kid who was very average,
Mm.
and they met with the 3rd grade teaching team saying, he's tested higher than anybody's ever tested before. He literally is a genius. And he was very middle of the road IQ, smart kid,
Mm.
but
Mhm.
middle of the road. The teachers, the team of teachers literally treated him like he was this genius.
Mm.
His IQ points went from the measurement from the end of the year went up in an unexplainable amount. And his belief in that, and they taught him that way. They taught him as if he was genius. So, but that test and many variations, but it proves that point that the mind and talking about crazy studies, uh, the this would not be allowed today because there's so many of those studies were brutal to animals. But
Yeah.
The story that the study that really sort of exemplifies in a weird way what we're talking about. They took a rat and they put it into a container of water where it couldn't get out.
Mm.
And after about 2 minutes of desperately trying to get out, the rat just accepted it couldn't get out, and it gave up. Just sort of did. Now they then pulled the rat out and sort of revived it, gave it some food, let it rest. So they started with a baseline. The rat lasted 2 minutes. When it realized it couldn't get out, it gave up.
Mm-hmm.
Same rat goes the next day, goes into the water, same situation. After 2 hours, they finally pulled it out because the rat wasn't going to give up. The rat understood that he would survive eventually and never gave up. So after 2 minutes, no belief would get out. The rat understood there was a way to survive this. And after 2 hours, everybody got bored and pulled the rat out. Again, brutal study. But it really exemplifies when the mind believes, the brain believes it's capable of great things, of far more than we realize. But when the mind's limited by a false belief, in this case, there's no way out of this puzzle for me, so let me accept my fate, the rat would have died.
So it raises the question, not only what kind of expectations do we have in our kids, but even more importantly, what expectations do we have in ourselves?
Yes.
Because now we're beginning to see, just through these illustrations that we're talking about here, that's a big deal. What we think about our own thought process, our own abilities, our own beliefs about what we can and can't do, that's pretty huge. Now we're really touching on what this art of allowing and limiting belief thing is really all about.
Sure. Yeah.
That topic, if you will, that understanding of how our thought process has such an immediate impact in a large way, it's something I kind of wish everybody really grasped. If we really understood that, how many different ways in our society today would we be behaving differently?
Oh, well, it would change everything in a good, positive way. I mean, it just, there would be so much, so much different. My every year I'm required for my health insurance to have a physical. And every year it seems like it's a different doctor. Doctors don't like me, and I generally don't like them.
Fair.
Yeah, I mean, because it's like I sort of roll my eyes and all their stuff. But so I met with his last doctor. This has been early February, and he was looking at everything. He looked at me and he goes, "What? You still lift heavy weights?" And we were, I hear this come, I'm saying, "Yeah, I still can deadlift 500 pounds. I do this, I work out." He goes, "Oh, you need to stop that immediately. That's ridiculous for your age." He said, "Really, in theory, you shouldn't even be able to do that." And I said, "In theory,
you aren't average enough, Joel. What's wrong with you?"
Yeah. I said, he said, "How about your back pain and knee pain?" I said, "I have no back pain, no knee pain. Have a little shoulder pain from really poor form from bench pressing years ago, but I don't have to do that a lot. But just explain that, everything's fine." He's like, "Well, this is damaging. This could damage all." And so after all the tests, all the blood work, he's like, "Everything's perfect. I don't understand it." I go, "Because I am in perfect health. I will never stop lifting heavy. My body has come to expect that's what we do. So it will rise to that occasion. It'll perform that way until I believe it won't."
And that's it right there.
That's it. And he goes,
"Perform that way until you believe it won't."
Yeah, he said, "Well,
that's it.
He said, "At some point it'll give out." I said, "Well, I'll contact you when it does." So I get up every morning with the belief that that's just what I do. I've done it for 50 years now. 50 years.
Yeah.
And he, by the end, he was like, I said, "You're wrecked." I just gave him a hard time. He goes, "So your suggestion is that I stop lifting heavy weights?" And he goes, "You're not going to." And I don't think it's a good idea, but your blood work and everything else seems to support your theory. So, just keep doing it, I guess. And I said, "Okay, well, thanks for your support." And just walked out.
That's a better answer than it could have been. I give him credit for that one.
Yeah. Well,
It didn't fit his narrative, but he was willing to bend to it.
by that time we'd spent enough time together for him to like his statement. And by the way, this is not my general advice for people overall. I've had 2 colonoscopies since I turned 50, and everything's fine. So he said, well, you're about due for another colonoscopy. I said, I'm not doing any more colonoscopies. And he's like, oh, no. I said, look, I'm not going to get into this with you. I'm good to go. Whatever goes. And he just was freaking out that I wouldn't have another colonoscopy. I said, I don't have colon cancer. I don't. I was cleared the first time. There weren't even any polyps there. Everything was fine. We're good. And he goes, well, I just think it's a terrible idea. And I go, clearly, yes, you do. And that's okay. I'm just not doing that anymore. And again, please hear that I'm not advising others. You listen to your doctor. I generally don't listen to my doctor. That's just my thing, what I do. But he just couldn't believe that he said, well, if you get colon cancer, I said, I don't have colon cancer. I will not get colon. I will not. He said, you can't say that for sure. And I go, I'm stating it as fact for me. He clearly doesn't understand.
It's amazing too. There's 2 interesting pieces to that conversation. The first interesting piece, the most interesting piece, is that you insisted in your own mind, regardless of what you said to him, you insisted in your own mind that you're going to use your mind for the good of your health.
Yes.
You're going to believe in your own health, even in the face of overwhelming rejection of that idea.
Yes.
You were determined you were going to do it anyway. And that makes you a stellar example of what we should all aspire to do. On the flip side, we have him demonstrating exactly how we impose limiting beliefs on others.
Yes.
And how we discourage people from trusting in the power of their own minds. Because that's literally what he wanted you to do. He wanted you to distrust what your mind was telling you should do.
Yeah, and if I wouldn't have been so strong, and after all these years of doing this, I might have capitulated, and I might have, I still don't think it would ever have. Even if I'd done the test, I still don't think it would have had it. But I'm adamant that he said, well, you ever considered that if you did get it, what would happen? I go, okay, well, whatever happens when you get colon cancer, I guess that's what would happen. But I don't have it. I will not get it. It's just, and I basically, I was trying to explain to him a little about, your belief system. I said, it isn't like I've never had one. I've had 2. The doctor said, everything's great. There's no sign of this. And the idea that I'm going to keep looking, because even if I had it, I'm going to not do what you tell me to do. I'm going to fix it my way. And so it doesn't, no sense for me to do your test. And so finally, the company that has my insurance, they were a little different. They wanted me to do one of those fecal tests, and I said, okay, because they said, if we're going to continue your insurance, you're gonna have to have this. So I had to do that just to continue the insurance for my kid.
Right.
So I did that, came back, results are saying absolutely fine, you're good. Now I knew it. I didn't need that test, but it was just, so I did send that to the doctor saying, by the way, I'm good. He never answered that, but it was, and again, I'm saying that works for me because I have zero doubt. There's just no chance I have that kind of stuff. Everything works great. I believe I can't deadlift 500 pounds if I have colon cancer. I can't do the things I do. I have unlimited energy. I work sometimes 50 hours a week. That doesn't match a sickness kind of mindset. It doesn't,
I'm going to throw something else out here along the same line. You very, very carefully and according to the way we generally do these things, very correctly said, well, I'm not recommending that other people follow my example. I'm just saying what I feel, what I do about doctors. I'm not going to be that nice guy. I'm actually going to go out there on a limb and cut the limb off while I'm sitting on it, because I'm going to say that doctor who was saying to you, yeah, but what if you get colon cancer? I kind of wish I could have the conversation with the doctor, because I want to ask him what I asked another doctor one time. And I'll tell you this story just before I tell you what I told him. This was while I was still married. My ex was going through a situation with a thyroid and with something else. I can't remember what it was. It was something that basically brought up we had to go to see a heart specialist. Not that she had a heart condition, but we had to go see a heart specialist because there was a potential of something being tied in. And when we were there, he learned that her family had a stroke history, so he wanted to put her on a stroke medication as a preventative. And both of us had very much the same mindset, so we were kind of quizzing him on it, like, how high of a risk are we talking about? And at first, he made it sound like the risk was really, really great, but we kind of insisted on numbers. And the first time he tried to give us numbers, I could tell that he was basically trying to pull the wool over our eyes.
Sure.
So I called him on that. Then he backed off and he said, well, here's what the actual numbers. We said, and we took what he said and we inverted it. He expressed it in a very negative term. We turned around, we said, so what you're saying is that there's a 97% chance that she will never have a stroke. And he reluctantly agreed to that, but he was still trying to talk her into the 3%. And that's why she should be on the medication.
Yes.
And that, now we've set the scene. This is how I wanted to lead into the thing that I said to him and that I wanted to say to your doctor. What I said to him was, I thought you understood how the nocebo effect works. And for those people who don't know what that is, nocebo is the flip side of the placebo effect. It's basically the idea that if your doctor tells you that you're going to have something that makes you sicker, you will be more likely to become sicker in order to live down to that diagnosis. And he knew exactly what I was talking about. You knew that, obviously. He had total knowledge of it. And he gave me this look like, how dare you? Oh, how dare you call me on that?
Yeah, they don't like that.
No, they don't like that at all. That if you want to make enemies with your doctor, it's a great way to do it. But I have no apologies for it, because the simple fact was he was giving my ex-wife advice that was basically designed to encourage her to eventually have a stroke. Yeah. And I wasn't going to stand for that. That just wasn't acceptable, because the nocebo effect is real. It's very well documented. It has been shown over and over again in studies to be a real phenomenon. I continue to be blown away at how many doctors ignore it. It's amazing to me.
Yeah, well, when somebody, you and I have discussed, we should really literally write a book about nocebo and placebo effects.
No kidding.
Because it's such a relevant thing. And so when people say it's just a placebo effect, like, what do you mean just? It is an incredible effect. The body actually responds to your belief that the sugar pill works is the most amazing thing in this whole story. But it's lost because, oh, well, it's just a placebo effect. You thought you were getting better, so you got better. I'm like, what? Of course, that's the miracle here. And it's just missed. I've had clients say, well, it's just the placebo effect. I go, no, we want yes, it is, and let's thrive with that. Let's believe it. Let's love it. Let's take it to the extreme.
That's right.
I've used the term with I've had another conversation. A lot of people are into crystals, and they'll ask me about crystals.
Right. Yeah, you've mentioned that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I personally don't believe that they're rocks. I don't care. I don't believe them. However, I never talk that's not their reality. I'm like, look, the crystals have great power, not because the crystals have great power, but because you believe the crystals have great power. They will do what you believe.
That's really important.
It is. I personally think they're rocks. They're not going to help me, but they'll really help you.
Yes. The more that we embrace that, the better off we all are. I can even give an example from last week now that I think about it. After our show last Monday, I had kind of like a scratchy throat. I don't know if I mentioned it to you, but I wasn't feeling really, really great. Woke up the next morning really sick. I was basically laid out on the couch the entire day. I slept most of the day. I went to bed that night, slept all night. I mean, I was just down for the count. But midway through that day, I said to myself, I don't want to be like this the rest of the week. I've got things I want to do. I want to heal on this. And I know my history. My history is if I get something like that, I probably got it for a week.
Right.
And I just didn't want to do that. I said, well, all right, how can I use placebo to my benefit here? Because I certainly don't feel it right now. So what do I do? So I know what general technique is. So I did my best to apply it. I I started watching something on television that was very lighthearted and very, warm and fuzzy to help me raise my vibration as much as I could, to be in a better feeling place. I knew I wasn't going to feel good, but maybe a little bit better than what I was feeling. And when I finally got to the point where I realized, okay, that's about as high as I'm going to go today. I can just feel that's kind of my limit for today. Then in that state of mind, I said to myself, I started imagining I am healthy. I know 24 hours from now, I'm going to be in great shape. And I held on to that for probably about 3 or 4 minutes. I just really focused on that as much as I could. And that wiped me out and I fell asleep, because I was sick.
Yeah.
So, that's about the best I could do. The next day I woke up and I wasn't well yet, but I was like halfway back to better, which was way ahead of what it normally would be for me.
Sure.
That was a Wednesday. Thursday was the second day afterward. I woke up symptom free.
Yeah.
So I basically took a situation that is normally a 1 week worth of sickness for me and turned it into 2 days.
Yes.
And I did it with placebo.
Yeah, and the body has an amazing way. One of the things that I've noticed, and years ago when I used to run treatment centers, this was very common. So there are people, let's say they're in the middle of a 2 or 3 year long, horrible addiction to gambling.
Mm-hmm.
They're not taking care of themselves. They're burnt, and then finally that all comes crashing down. Some event happens, they have to stop. So I tell people this all the time. When you get to treatment and everything calms down, you're going to get sick.
Mm.
Not I don't tell it to plant the seed. I tell them because once the body has been exhausted and has been fighting and fighting and fighting, then it gets so much calmer. It gets so much better. Then it starts feeling bad. It's like I call it the recovery flu. It's the recovery flu. It lasts a few days, and you'll get over it, and then things will be. But it's just it inevitably happens, and it's just this thing that wow. You look at it, you say this makes no sense. Never get sick. Well, you get sick now because the body's constantly like, I got to keep going, got to keep going. It's life or death to keep going. And then once that battle's off, the body says, okay, now we're tired. And so, the belief systems, the body's ability to stave off, of sickness when it has to, like there's people that'll be in great battles that'll have in the middle of some huge battle somewhere back in the old days where it's hand-to-hand combat or swords. Yeah. They're horribly sick, but they don't have time. They're going to die if they don't. So they're able to fight, they're able to win, and then when they get to safety, they pass out. It's like, right. But they can override that. It's like people that are really sick and they have to take action. They're able to override the sickness for a little bit to take action to maybe save their kid or save themselves. Yeah. Then they're back to being sick.
Yeah. Now we haven't talked about it lately, but years ago we were talking about the power of the mind and how it has been documented that humans have applied it often in situations of crisis. And the classic example is the mom whose kid gets stuck under a car and she does the impossible and lifts a car that's far more than she can possibly lift off of the kid.
Yeah.
And then can't possibly reproduce it the next time that she's asked to do it.
Well, no, because it's that heat of the moment that I had a client one time that had she was originally sent to me because she was unable to walk, which is not my normal client, but the doctor said that she physically was fine. There was something blocking her from walking, and I needed to work with her on that. So try hypnotherapy and different things, and no matter what we did, she just had a belief she couldn't walk. And so she used a wheelchair, and she had this beautiful home. In her bedroom, the master bedroom overlooked the indoor pool.
Oh, okay.
And so she's in bed, and her daughter and her very young grandson, who was like 1.5 or 2, were visiting, and so the granddaughter or the daughter was getting stuff together and trying to bring food up to her mom. Well, the granddaughter slips and literally like breaks her leg, like bad break, not
Mm.
sort of broke, like a compound kind of fracture break.
Oh my goodness! Wow.
So she's screaming, "Mom, call 911! My legs broke bad, and I don't have my phone." So her mom has her phone, but in the meantime, while that's happening, this lady hears a splash in the pool. That was the baby fell in the pool.
Wow.
She hops out of bed, jumps over the balcony, lands in the pool, pulls the baby out, goes in there and helps her daughter before she realized she was walking.
Mm.
So whatever was blocking her ended that day.
Yeah.
It's that there. It just was this amazing thing. She went from I can't walk to hurdling up something, pulling her grandson out,
Mm-hmm.
then helping her daughter, calling it. It's like, what happened? I go, whatever was blocking you overrode it. That tragedy, that potential tragedy, overrode. You were not going to have your grandson drown in the pool. Your daughter couldn't get to it. 911 is not going to get there in time to save your grandson.
Right.
So
Right.
you had no option but to override that, and you did it without thinking.
Which is fabulous. Which is
Yes.
absolutely
Yeah,
fabulous.
that's a great. I always loved that. That was an amazing story.
Now, the real trick, of course, as much as I love that story, the real trick is to figure out how can we do that without having to face a dire situation.
If we can bottle that up, we're going to be billionaires. I promise you.
I think you're right. Yeah. That doesn't stop me from wondering what the solution is, though, because there's
Oh,
got to be a way to do that.
There's got to be enough. I want to figure it out now. So that's seriously. So if we ever could bypass all that, that's fantastic.
Well, maybe
Well,
we'll have an answer by next show. Who knows?
yeah, I have one, and I know we're right at time, but I have this other story. Years ago, my sister, my parents were remodeling their house, so they were staying with my sister's house for a little while. My sister didn't get off until usually at 11 o'clock. She was a supervisor at this insurance company call-in center, and so my parents, who always go to bed at like 9 o'clock, they turn off all the lights, they go to bed, and my sister gets home and they're not there. So while they were there, my sister had this beautiful boxer that she loved. That was her child. And so the while my mom and dad are watching TV, the dog made this yelp and sort of had a heart attack and died instantly,
Oh my
laying on
God.
the floor. Yeah.
Wow.
And so they were so worried that my sister was going to be devastated. That was her baby, basically.
Sure.
So what happened was my sister got out of the car and realized that the lights were on and knew something was wrong. So she went into what happened to my brother. Did something happen to my brother? Because this wasn't long after TJ had died.
Oh, wow.
And so she comes running in the house and goes, "Is Joel okay?" And she goes, "Yeah,
Oh
why?"
my.
He goes, "But unfortunately, I forget the dog's name. The dog passed away tonight."
Mhm.
And my sister's like, "Well, that is bad news, but where my mind was going,"
Mm.
she said in a weird way, it sort of muted the effect. She's Mr. Dog, of course, and all that. But that initial action of what are we going to, like, is my brother safe? Assuming that something happened to my brother after we lost her nephew,
Mhm.
that overrode. Yeah, it was bad. Her dog died, but it
Yeah.
wasn't. It didn't have the same impact. It's almost like it diluted because the perspective would change from, "Oh my God, this is terrible," to, "Well, this is bad," but just adjust perspective, if that makes any sense.
Well, not only does it make sense, I love how, I mean, we always try to find ways to talk about how perspective is really so valuable and all the
Yes,
different ways that you and I consciously try to use it in our own lives. You try to help your clients to use it and so on and so forth. I love the examples we came up with today simply because they're quite different from the ones we normally talk about,
yeah,
but they do illustrate beautifully how those perspectives can lead us to a more powerful situation, more powerful position in our own lives
absolutely.
just by having those perspectives. So
Perspective is everything.
it really is. It is. So another great show. Thank you very much for exploring all this with us today. I appreciate you so much on this.
I
And
enjoyed it, my friend.
I did as well, and hope people got a lot out of it. At the very least, we hope that you got out of it that you have more power in your brain than you've given yourself credit for, and maybe it's time to try to explore it a little bit. if you can get that much out of it, this is a victorious show.
Huge. Have a great evening, my friend. Thanks
Yep,
for
you do the
listening.
same. We'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.